Thanks for listening to the Red Treehouse, where I tell you scary stories to keep you up at night. You can listen to the Red Treehouse wherever you stream podcasts. Just be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. The Red Treehouse is dedicated to my dad. I love you, Pop. You know, I can probably count on one hand the number of celebrity deaths that have affected me at a deeper level. Sportscasting icon Stuart Scott, Prince, Robin Williams, Whitney Houston, Michael K. Williams, and most recently, Catherine O'Hara. The day before she passed, my wife and I commented that it had been a while since we'd rewatched Schitt's Creek, and that we should do that soon. It's a comfort show for us. Funny, low stress, and genuinely heartwarming. And Moira Rose is a massive part of why the show works so well. And of course, having just come out of both the Halloween and Christmas seasons, Catherine O'Hara was a strong presence in both, as Delia Deetz in Beetlejuice and its recent sequel, Shock and Sally in The Nightmare Before Christmas, and as Kate McAllister in Home Alone and Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. Reflecting on these roles got me thinking about a simple way to pay tribute to an actress that was a defining part of my childhood. And what better way than to tell you the scariest Home Alone stories that are guaranteed to have you checking your doors and windows, and are guaranteed to keep you up at night. In this episode of The Red Treehouse, I'm going to narrate 5 true Home Alone horror stories. Some supernatural, others not so much, all unsettling. What would you do if you found yourself facing a terrifying situation while home alone? I'll share the stories. You decide for yourself. I'm your host, Will. Welcome to the Red Treehouse. Story 1. I used to live in a house with a bunch of family, cousins, aunt, grandparents, etc. My cousin had a hamster. He used to call him Super Hamster. The hamster loved to run on his wheel in the dead of night. Eventually he got old and passed away. Fast forward a few years, and I'm a teenager, playing video games in our computer room, where Super Hamster's cage used to be. It's about 2 or 3 a.m., and I just finished a round of StarCraft Brood War, when suddenly I start hearing a bunch of squeaking, like a rusty wheel that needs to be oiled. Confused, I quickly turn around and try to find the sound, but the sound continues, on, and it gets louder as I approach the spot where Super Hamster's cage used to be. I'm freaked out, but I'm skeptical, thinking I'd just been gaming too hard. Except the sound of the hamster wheel was still spinning and squeaking. So I ran out of the room and ran into a different part of the house that was part kitchen, part storage. And lo and behold, the Super Hamster's cage is still there. I should tell you that this was my grandparents' house, and they were hoarders. As soon as I spot the cage, the squeaking sound of the wheels suddenly stopped. Listen, I was freaked out. But I was too much of a nerd to stop playing Brood War. So I grabbed a Coke and just nervously looked over my shoulder until 6 a.m. while playing games. Okay, second story. The same house, but a younger me. I was 9 or 10 years old. Everyone is asleep in the house. My grandpa and my dad have left for work, and it's probably 2 a.m. I've always had insomnia, so I'm tossing and turning and unable to fall asleep. Suddenly, the sound of work boots, steel-toed work boots, start bumping up and down the hallway outside of my door. This goes on for about 20 to 30 minutes before I work up the courage to open my door and peek outside. Nothing. I check the rooms. My stepmom is fast asleep. My grandmother is asleep. My little sister is also asleep. There's nobody in the house but me. So I crawl back into bed and lay for about another hour, when suddenly, the same work boot starts thudding up and down the hallway, eventually stopping at where my doorway would have been. And then my door slightly nudges, and the boot sounds stop. Alright, here's my third and final story. The thing that has terrified me the most was when I was 5 years old. This is a different house. I'm with my mom's family, all of my stepbrothers and sisters and everything. The parents are playing dominoes and cards, and I'm waiting on my dad to show up and pick me up to take me to his house for the summer, but he's running late. It's 9:30 p.m., and finally my mom tells me it's time to go to bed. I thought this was unfair, because all the other kids got to stay up late, but I needed to go to bed because my dad was going to be there in the morning to pick me up. So she takes me upstairs, alone, in the dark, and places me in her bed. I ask her to stay until I fall asleep because the room spooked me out. It always did. She said she couldn't. The other parents were downstairs waiting. So she leaves and closes the door behind her. And now it's pitch black. I can't see anything. So I'm just sitting there, and as I watch, I notice a shadow-like thing is forming around the edge of the bed. Terrified, I instinctively pull the covers up to my face and watch this thing move around. It was about the height of a small child. Now I'm stuck in this spot for what feels like eternity. Eventually, I muster up the courage and run to the door, fling it open, and ask to come downstairs. I hear, "Go to bed," and then my mom puts me back in that room and closes the door behind her once again. This time, the shadowy childlike figure appeared on the left side of the bed and just watched me for an even longer period of time. Then, the blankets begin to get heavier and heavier until it feels like they're being pulled off of me completely. So now my little arms are forcing this very heavy blanket to stay on me to keep me covered. The shadowy childlike figure then scurries into the closet and evaporates through the door. But it doesn't end there. One of those glowworm babies starts to go off, but it doesn't sing the sweet lullaby. It just starts speaking, words mixed up and in different places, and in different voices, non-baby voices. I'm fully freaked the fuck out at this point, and with tears in my eyes, I run out the door, take a sharp left, and almost fall down the stairs. I beg and plead with my mom to stay up there with me, but she isn't having it, and again she puts me in that room. But this time, with an attitude, she tells me to go to bed, and then she closes the door behind her for a third time. So I crawl into bed, I stare at that closet, and that fucking toy comes back on, but with no voice, just a light. But this time, its head has been cocked to a different angle, and it's now facing me, staring down from the top of the closet at me, but it doesn't go off. Finally, as I get tired enough to drift off to sleep, I hear some thuds. My mom is coming up the stairs. And listen, that fucking toy giggled randomly. Then, as my mom opened the door, it shut off, and that was that. Story 2. It's important to know up front that this story wasn't scary until after the facts were known to me. I was 14, and it was the first time I had been left alone for the summer. My parents were very protective and only allowed it because my grandmother lived a block away. I was sleeping late, because why not, when I heard my bedroom door open. It was a heavy door and not prone to opening by itself, and as I turned my head to look, I saw a youngish-looking guy with blonde hair poking his head in. He said something like, "Oh, sorry," and shut the door. For some reason, I thought he was there to work on our air conditioner, except I'm not sure why I thought that, because it was not broken, and it wasn't in my room. This was before we had central AC, and our largest unit was in the kitchen. Anyway, I picked up the telephone and called my grandmother to ask who was in the house. When I told her what happened, she said to hang up and call my mom at work, and she would call 911 and then head over. It still didn't really scare me though. I guess being sleepy was a factor here. I called my mom, and she freaked out. It took only about 2 minutes for my grandmother to make it down. I had gotten dressed, but didn't leave my now locked room until I heard her come in. The cops got there a few minutes later. I can't remember anything that the guy took, other than a couple of knives of my dad's, literally razor sharp. He had broken one of our picture windows, and very kindly left both full handprints on the glass that he carefully removed and set on our boat so it didn't get shards everywhere. The cops took a statement, description, and told me how lucky I was to not have panicked. We got the window replaced, and I had to go to my grandmother's house when I got up, or she had to come to my house for the remainder of the week. Why a week? Well, this is where it gets scary. The guy had apparently just gotten out of jail, lived in the area, and was a known thief. Word got back to the brother he was living with, and he got the shit kicked out of him by said brother for doing it again. The cops couldn't find him after that because he took off. A few days later, my grandmother and I were sitting at her house, and she decided to call my elderly neighbor to check on her. No answer. We walked down after calling another neighbor who said she hadn't been able to reach her either. After no answer at her front door, my grandmother sent me to the back. There was no fence, and as I rounded the corner, I found her. She was in her nightgown, crawling and reaching a hand out, and had nothing but pulp left for a face. I cannot remember it at all other than that, and I'm very thankful for that. I must have screamed because I remember my grandmother running towards me. We, of course, called an ambulance and the police. My mom told me what happened after speaking with her at the hospital. The same guy that broke into my house had broken into hers. He beat her with her phone and her cane, broke her arms, fingers, most of the bones in her face, and she lost her left eye. I think he thought he killed her. She was 82 and died a couple days later. It seems like he thought she was an easy target. She was in her yard all the time, walked with a cane, and was the sweetest lady you would ever have the pleasure of knowing. I've tried to look it up in papers since then, but can't find anything. I'm not sure it would be a good idea anyway. He got 99 years for it. I don't remember his name, but I do remember hers, and will never forget her. I think of her often, and I also think it could have been me instead of her, although it was done at night, and both my parents were home. We'll continue right after this quick ad break.
Kaylee Cuoco and Sam Claflin star in the MGM Plus original series, Vanished. When the man Alice loves disappears on a train to the south of France, every romantic memory becomes evidence. Every intimate detail, a potential threat. She thought she knew everything about him, but she may not even know his real name. New episode Sunday on MGM Plus. Finding the truth is a dangerous affair.
Story 3. My wife and I recently moved out of a home that I can only describe as fucked up. The house caused so much anger and hatred. Whatever entity resides in the home is either menacing or pure evil. Scary things happened as soon as my wife moved into the home when she was a child. She told me a story of when her and her little brother were playing one night in his room. They were playing with a leapfrog-type device, and she described in detail about how she was showing her brother how to use it, and it suddenly began to act strange. Scary sounds came out of it, and then a man's voice began screaming from it. She said it was saying something about a list, something about making mistakes, screaming and cursing until she turned it off. So let's fast forward some. I met my wife a few years ago, and we eventually had a kid, so we decided that it was the logical thing to move in together. Sweet, no problem. At the time I worked the night shift, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. This will come up later. After a few weeks of moving in, I noticed something strange about the house. The upstairs where we lived seemed menacing, like someone was in the other room waiting for you. At first I brushed it off as just being nervous. New house, new life kind of thing. I also thought maybe it was the insomnia that work was causing me. As time went on, I began noticing more and more. Whenever the house should have been dead silent, strange things would happen. Footsteps up and down the hallways, knocks on doors, and sometimes I would swear I heard whispers. Being a believer in spirits, I wasn't especially afraid. That is, until things started getting dark. One morning as I was lying in bed, watching Netflix and hoping to fall asleep, I heard a rustling from the closet. It was just light enough in the room that you could make everything out. I saw nothing and thought maybe it was just the fan. Something moved out of the corner of my eye, and as I looked in the closet, a dark ball moved from the closet to the bedroom door. It was about the size of a softball, and moved about as fast as a person could to the door. Later in the week, my wife had gotten into the bad habit of sleeping with the closet light on. I blame myself for that one. I should have kept my mouth shut. So we were lying there talking about baby stuff, when I noticed the curtain that covered the closet opening move. My wife was curled into me facing my chest, and I was staring at the closet. I saw what I can only describe as a tiny mist-like figure, not like white mist, but slightly darker than the rest of the background. It moved out of the closet and was maybe 3 feet tall, and vanished as quickly as it appeared. As soon as I began telling my wife what had happened, she had a sharp pinch on her back. She didn't cry out or scream. She just calmly turned around and shouted, "Get the fuck out and leave us the fuck alone." Too bad it didn't work. Now let's fast forward. You're probably wondering what else happened. Well, small stuff here and there for a while. Footsteps were regular, and I know some of you are probably saying, "It's the house settling, you jackass." I would agree. But not only did the footsteps stretch out the entire length of the 20-foot hallway, they sometimes were fast. And the knocks on the doors were very rhythmic. You know, like when you knock on a friend's door when they're home or something. So let's get to the scary stuff. After this recent Christmas, things began to spark up to a new level. One day I was sitting on my computer, and my wife came into the room asking me what I needed from the store. The computer room was directly across from the bathroom. Our daughter's bedroom door was to the immediate left of that, and the stairs were to the right. I began telling my wife what I wanted, when she looked out the door and turned, well, ghost white. Her eyes got big and her mouth dropped. She slowly turned toward me. I just saw a man walk into Elena's room. She begins describing what it looked like. It was about 6 feet tall, dark, and only slightly translucent. While she's describing this, I walk out into the hallway and go into my daughter's bedroom. Have you ever walked into a freezer, like the ones Walmart stocks ice cream in, That immediate chill is what I felt when I walked in there. There was nothing, of course, but as soon as we began walking out, a set of metal bed frames we had laying against the wall, for over a year I might add, slid down and fell to the floor. My wife turned back into the room and told whatever it was to get the fuck out of our home. But it didn't, of course. Come January, things really picked up before we moved out. The power got knocked out during a sudden storm, and we were left in the dark for a night. My wife at this point wanted nothing to do with the home and wanted to stay at her dad's, so we began packing her things for the night. I went downstairs and got my daughter loaded up in the car, and as I started walking back in, my wife shot out of the door nearly in tears. I asked her what was wrong, and she only said, "I don't want to talk. Close the door. Let's go." The upstairs to the home is pitch fucking black even on the brightest day due to the layout. So when the power's off during a storm, you might as well be underground. My wife was in our room gathering her makeup and things with only a flashlight. As she was loading her items into her bag, she heard someone walk from the stairs, down the hallway, and right up against her back. She assumed it was me, but when she turned around, she saw nothing and no one. Except pitch black, and not like darkness black. Imagine someone holding a black sheet in front of you, something like that. Even on our moving out day, things were happening upstairs. It was the worst I've personally ever felt, just dread and sorrow. And even as we were preparing to move out, my wife once again had something walk up on her, and she heard knocks on the bedroom door as she was packing. We've gone back a few times to get a thing or two since we've left, and every time, it's terrifying to walk upstairs. Story 4. Okay, so there was a time when I used to babysit my younger siblings. I was a sophomore in high school, and one night my parents went out. Mind you, we lived in the middle of nowhere. So at night, no one comes up our road. We lived on a turnaround and we were the only house on the road. Well, the dogs started barking outside. Okay, no big deal. They usually bark at cows, coyotes, and whatever. Except, we saw headlights coming up the road. Okay, it's Mom and Dad, we thought. Except, that wasn't their car. It comes all the way up to the house and sits in the driveway for a few minutes. Now I'm kinda freaking out. Then suddenly it leaves. 10 minutes later, the car comes back, pulls up into the driveway, and just sits there once again. I tell my brother and sister to come into my parents' room and hide in my dad's closet. I get out a shotgun, grab a few shells, and do a safety check. Everything my dad taught me. Then I put the shells in my pocket. I didn't load it just in case, and I walk out. My dog is freaking the hell out at this truck. He's growling, barking, baring his teeth and all that. Now I'm standing on the porch with this heavy-ass shotgun in my hand and call my dog. The truck is still facing me with its headlights on. Within a second, my dog comes to my side and I cock the gun, and then aim. And suddenly, the truck suddenly speeds off. Once they're gone, the fear takes over. I'm shaking, I'm scared, and I keep telling myself, remember, red Toyota Tacoma, rear bumper missing, red Tacoma, rear bumper missing. I go inside and put the shotgun propped up by the door, and tell my brother and sister it's all clear. Listen, I was so freaked out I started crying. That year, 2 people were stabbed in their house 2 miles down the road. They were home sleeping when someone broke in. They both survived. Then, a house 10 miles down the road was robbed. This happened only a few months apart. My parents didn't learn about it until my mom told someone she knew about what happened at our house. It fucking scared us all. Luckily, my dad taught us kids proper gun safety and how to shoot. I guess for times like these. We always just thought it was something fun to do. You know, we lived in the South, so it was common to have a gun and to go out and shoot ski whenever. And here's where it really gets scary. The red Tacoma was allegedly spotted leaving both crime scenes. If I hadn't known how to intimidate someone with the shotgun, I don't know if we'd been okay. Plus, thanks to my dog for probably scaring them too much to get out of their truck. We'll continue right after this quick ad break. Story 5. I broke into an old coworker's house and proceeded to live in their attic to survive the winter. It started when I lost my job in 2020 and lived off unemployment. I lost my unemployment in early winter 2020 and had to move out of my apartment. I bummed around for a few days, trying to couch surf, but to no avail. Eventually, winter started getting more harsh, and I was getting more desperate. In my desperation, I remembered an old coworker who lived in a neighborhood down the street. I went to his place a few times because our significant others were friends. They met at a company picnic and hit it off. I never really liked either of them too much. We'll call them both John and Jane. But back to the story. I remembered where they kept their spare house key, and when they were away from home, I checked, and it was still there. So I made my way into their house. A rush of anxiety hit me as I made my way in. I was starving, but was too afraid to get any food. I just grabbed a bottle of water and made my way into their attic. I proceeded to creep around, getting an idea of where the creaky boards were and where I could lie down. The attic wasn't cozy at all, and still quite cold. It was also extremely dark. For some reason, I imagined it would be brighter like the Christmas Vacation movie. I shifted some boxes around and poked around for a blanket. I found a musty blanket that smelled like cat pee and made my bed in a pile of Halloween decorations and other BS. I waited until they got home. After multiple hours, I heard the front door open. Another rush of anxiety overcame me. My heart started pounding in my chest, and I also realized that you can't really hear anything through the floor like I expected. I assumed it was Jane, as I would sometimes hear her walk by and singing to herself. A few hours later, John came home. I spent most of that time sitting completely still, and I went to bed when they did. The next day, I awoke to the sound of the front door closing. I put my ear to the floor to see what I could hear, and I could hear Jane's voice talking to someone else. Well, I come to find out, Jane was working from home because of the pandemic. I wouldn't come to this conclusion for a few days. Due to this, I started sneaking out at night, and the few times they would both leave. Most of the way I knew they would be gone was by copying down Jane's schedule off her calendar on their fridge. Taking that knowledge and the work schedule John and I had, I could get a good idea when they'd be home. This continued for days, then weeks, then months. As time passed, I got more and more brazen, sneaking more food, getting close calls, etc. The closest call was when they came up into the attic to decorate for Christmas. If you remember, I had made myself a nook in their Halloween decorations, so I was confident they wouldn't find me. That still didn't make any of this any less scary. Also, John made a joke mentioning how awful it smelled up there, like onions and cat piss. I held my breath, hoping he wouldn't search for the source. They left for a week to visit Jane's family for Christmas. During this time, I showered, slept in their bed, and ate any food I could get my hands on. Once late February came, I felt I had been risking it too much. From sneaking lots of food, showering in their shower, sometimes even admittedly watching them fall asleep, I decided to sneak out and never return. During this time, I actually grew a strong parasocial relationship with them, and still have some of their clothes and random items. I feel guilty for this, but time has passed and I feel comfortable saying this, but I would never tell them. I have since then started following them on social media, and still watch them to this day. They have had a baby, and she is beautiful. What did you think of these scary Home Alone stories? Comment or email redtreehousepod@gmail.com. And if you have a scary experience of your own, reach out and I'll feature your story on an upcoming episode. As we close this episode of the Red Treehouse, make plans to join me next time as we continue exploring our strange and scary world. I'm your host, Will. Thanks for joining me in the Red Treehouse.